Thanks everybody for hanging in here. You're the last presentation between here and the lunch table, so I really appreciate you coming in. So more seismic change in 35 minutes. The panel today is really all about new business models and investing in the future, and we have two distinguished panelists here from the publishing industry. And we thought it would be very, very interesting to have them today talk a little bit about how they're thinking about the marketplace, what the reaction to their customer base is, what the window of opportunity is, what types of options they're seeking to transform their businesses. I'll let all three of our panelists talk a little bit from left to right to introduce themselves, because you're better at it than I am, and we'll start the session, please.
So I'm Luyen Chou. I'm the Chief Product Officer for K-12 Technology at Pearson. And I actually came to Pearson about a year and a half ago, a little less than that, by way of Pearson's acquisition of SchoolNet, where I was for about 6 years prior to that.
My name is David Joseph. I run global strategic alliances for Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt for mass market and consumer opportunities. But I also was just handed M&A responsibilities as well across the organization, so that's a recent focus as well.
And Vineet, Madan, Senior Vice President for Strategy and Corporate Development for McGraw-Hill Education. Actually, this might be one of our last opportunities to be in this venue, since we just announced yesterday we were being sold to Apollo. So exciting times for us, certainly. Been at the company for 7.5 years, in the education group for 6, driving a lot of the change efforts we've had on digitally transforming the business.
And my name is Pugliese, and I guess I would describe myself as a free agent entrepreneur in education. Most recently, I've dedicated my time to philanthropy, and that's a 5-second commercial message, because I'm building a school in Haiti, and I'm going to seek all of you out for donations in the new year. So enough with my commercial message here. So publishers, really dominate this panel, and all of you as growth stage businesses or small startup businesses say, okay, well, there's publishers here, but this obviously is in the middle of significant transformation, so it's very, very timely and appropriate to hear from this group, not necessarily on how they're going to transform their businesses, but also how it relates to some growth stage businesses and the kind of things that you all are thinking about in recalibrating your businesses to the market opportunity. So it's really good to have you here from your perspective from a large company. While you're obviously in a large business, I think there's a lot we can learn from the industry and how you're thinking about this. And if all of you have attended the sessions with the startup businesses, kudos to all of you. I think there's a tremendous opportunity. Some of the better presentations that we found in the year, at least I found in last SIA conferences. So a lot to look forward to. So you're on the high end, they're on the low end, and I think we're sort of all in this change market together. So this really is about kind of starting over. And I look personally to the publishing industry as an R&D organization. So many of these businesses, can't really afford to be an R&D organization. Education gets 0.002% of the healthcare, which is about 1.2 trillion in R&D. So technically, you guys are really the only one who can fund some of the R&D innovation in this industry. So we're really, really happy to have you here. I'm going to start with one question, and I'm hoping that all of you have a lot of questions to answer, to ask this group here. There hasn't been enough, I think, question and answer from the audience in the past couple sessions, and hopefully we can keep it at that. But I thought that where I would start, I have a graphic here, and it's okay if we don't get it, but it's basically the 2011 Gartner hype cycle, and it looks at the digital textbook environment. And we do have it here. We'll just pull up that slide right there. There we go. So if you look at the hype cycle, at the top end of the spectrum, you can see obviously all these e-textbook, open source, a variety of different, sort of top end of the hype cycle. And, going back to the dot-com days, I don't know that we've ever seen this amount of attention in education, money going into education, transactions happening. And so, many people who know me know that I'm very critical of our own industry, and I say, we're a very supply-driven organization. We build things, we sell them, we put them out there, and hopefully people buy them. You guys have the distribution channel, you control that distribution channel, so it's somewhat easy for you to obviously change mentality. But at the same time, from a demand side perspective, what I really want to hear to start off the session from you guys is, what's the process that you're undergoing to listen to the customer? How are they thinking about, in particular, this whole digital transition environment? And how are you looking at that in terms of a revenue model? What research have you done? What are you hearing? What are they saying? What are they looking for? How much confusion is out there? And I just want to understand the demand side of the equations on how you're talking to your customers about how they want new products and services and new innovation from this change. So anyone who wants to start.
Sure. I mean, I think that one of the big benefits of being a large company is that you have a lot of customers too, and they spend a lot of time telling you what it is that they want and how they see their needs evolving. Certainly, we're seeing big external drivers like the move towards Common Core and the assessment consortia driving very immediate needs for totally new products and services. But beyond that, I would say that the biggest forces that I see, as a product person, are a real desire to move towards a rapid digitization of the learning experience, moving away from print and traditional modes of delivery, obviously. But with that comes sort of the need for a better user experience and a higher degree of integration of these products. And so one of the top frustrations that I deal with is even when we're in a customer or district or state where you've got a bunch of Pearson products, even if there are a few third-party products, really creating a high-quality interconnected experience is something that our customers are demanding. And so we're putting a fair amount of R&D in really understanding how to deliver that kind of integrated experience to our customers. I think that's a huge, huge need, and customers are demanding it right now.
Obviously a tall order with all the assets of Pearson.
Absolutely.
Anyway, what else?
One thing to just mention related to your slide, I think what you depicted there was just a typical boom, bust, gradual growth cycle that comes with every, really with the digital transformation. We've seen that happen in industries for the last 15 years, whether it's e-commerce, retail, finance, advertising, et cetera. And now it's starting to happen in education, but I would say that we're at the very beginning. We're in the foothills because, even though you might say that there's some hype, there really isn't, you're not seeing the frenzy that typically comes with those kinds of cycles. And in that kind of, and bringing it back to your question, and when you're seeing this kind of initial hype around technology, you see a lot of fits and starts. I mean, when the iPad came out, obviously that was a big catalyst to a degree, and you saw a lot of teachers coming out and saying or schools saying we need tablets without really understanding exactly what they needed, understanding the cost structure, understanding what was going to be happening with those tablets, the content that was going to be delivered through those tablets, or even really how they're going to be used within the ecosystem. And you're starting to see people become a little bit more intelligent around that. You're seeing fragmentation in LMSs and all that kind of stuff on the landscape, but it's really not at its frenzied state. However, what's important as you're entering a cycle like this is to really remain focused on the usability. That's critical. It's all about student outcomes, learning effectiveness. Teachers, you're going to hear generally from your customers, administrators, teachers, or really now even consumers, which is a big focus of ours, differing needs, and what throughout all that noise, you really need to isolate the problem, what the solution is for today. It's not about what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. It's really what the need is for today, and to build towards a long-term strategy so that when you're at the peak of that cycle, you're benefiting from the oncoming consolidation as opposed to suffering from it.
Yeah, to add to what these guys have said, I mean, a lot of the kind of new tools in the toolkit that we've started to use more and more is more ethnographic research. And so rather than just, certainly you've still got to go out and spend time with your customers and talk to them. But the other piece of it is seeing what they're actually trying to accomplish and seeing where they're running into problems or pain points or experiencing, some of these disconnects that Luyen was talking about. So those imply a set of products and services before anyone will be able to articulate needs for those products and services or integration points or things like that. Single sign-on is a great example, right? So all of us here and all of you provide sets of products and services and software, a lot of which have usernames and passwords. Well, guess what? If you're in a classroom today, you're going to have dozens of usernames and passwords you need to maintain. If you're taking 6, 7 courses, each one's using 2 or 3 different pieces of software, good luck. I mean, it makes it really, really hard for educators and really, really hard for students. And no surprise, the highest volume of calls we get into our customer service centers are about username and password problems. People forget what they are is the most common one. So focusing on eliminating some of these pain points so people can get access to the learning experiences that all of us in this room provide is increasingly important, right? So we've had a very concerted push behind single sign-on, integrating with all the different learning management systems that are out there and other authentication systems to remove those barriers. The other interesting thing that happens is you find opportunities for new products and services. Some of those we'll kind of invest in and create on our own, and we've done that with adaptive learning technology. It's something we've got called LearnSmart. And then we'll also go out and acquire sets of things. So an example of that is, lecture capture and retrieval shows up here. I studied engineering and finance through my formal educational system. I would have loved to have been able to go to my phone, my computer, and be able to search and pull up information from my lecture, from what my professor said in my class about a certain topic. Well, guess what? You can now do that almost infinitely scalably with software and make those experiences accessible via the cloud. That's additive to the types of things that we've historically done as content providers. So I think you'll find opportunities both to make their lives simpler from taking away some of these pain points, as well as invent new products and services. I think the key point on the innovation and inventing side is make sure that you're really addressing a compelling need. So an example on the other side of this is ebooks. I can't count the number of ebook platform providers there are. At one point I would have ventured dozens, now I'll venture it's probably hundreds. I don't know, how many do we need? I mean, they all have slightly different features and functionality, but at some point you've got to say, are these really answers to a compelling set of needs? I don't know that they all are. So I think really focus on the needs, really focus on understanding what your customers are telling you, but also what they're not telling you, but what their experiences are with your products and other people's products, as Luyen mentioned.
So just a follow-up question real quick, and I'll turn it over to the audience, is, I mean, are you feeling the pressure? Are you feeling pressure from executives at your own companies, pressures from the customer? How much time frame are you working within to change your business models? How much R&D money are you throwing at these types of sort of innovations that you know now that you have to create?
I think I can speak for myself. I feel enormous pressure to help Pearson to really transform its business. I mean, if you think about it, Pearson in many respects has been ahead of the game in that it really started in education to move aggressively into being a platform and services business with the acquisition of NCS many years ago, and I think has really quickly gotten into the business of being a technology platform provider. But I think clearly, as in any other traditional media business that you look at, the traditional textbook curriculum and assessment business model is under tremendous duress, and I think it's going to go away sooner rather than later. And that's probably a good thing for learners, because I think what you're seeing is tremendous amounts of innovation sort of orbiting around the new technologies and new learning models, new business models. I think companies like Pearson, like our companies, are very, very well positioned to capitalize on the distribution networks that we've created, the relationships with customers, the access to customers that drives targeted R&D, but we have to fundamentally change what our product offerings are in the way that we deliver them. And we have to do that while at the same time, for instance, certainly in Pearson's case as a public company, being able to continue to tell a great story to the street quarter by quarter. We don't have the luxury of saying, leave us alone for 8 quarters and we're going to come back with a great story that's going to blow you away. Right?
Interesting. We naturally would think that would be the case, but that's not the case, actually. So, okay.
Yeah, I think anybody who's not under pressure in this industry today has their head in the sand. I think this reminds me of I worked at eBay in 2003, and it was very. And when I talk about the frenzy, it was every day was a new day. I don't think we're there just yet here, although things are starting to move very rapidly, and you need to move as quickly. Yeah. Everybody's under pressure. It's not being driven by anybody other than the market, our customers. And when, similar to when I was at eBay, we felt like we were going after white space, and that's pretty much what we're doing today. And we didn't see our direct competition from the incumbents. It was really more or less from the technologies or really the startups that are going to be coming out of left field with a new product that was compelling and that would take off very rapidly. Yeah. And that's also, though, puts us in a pretty good position. Because at HMH we now have some powder. We're looking at the market from an alliances perspective, from an M&A perspective. We're not late to the game at all, because what's happening right now is that you're seeing a lot of different ideas emerge. And there was somebody who said today that there really aren't many interesting ideas out there. There are a lot of interesting ideas, but quite honestly, about 5 out of 100 of them will be interesting, right? 5% of them, and it's that's just basically the way the world works. It's in any industry that's usually the case, and what you need to do is pick your spots in competing effectively. I mean, we're doing alliances in Asia that are far more advanced than what's happening even in the States today. We've got a great relation with SK Telecom in Korea, where we're delivering interactive HTML5 content through Galaxy devices directly to students or even into learning centers and institutions. We're now starting to do things around robotic education, around smart beams. In the States, you're starting to see it move fast as well. Not as fast as in other markets, but we're learning from different experiences and trying to pull that into our strategy. So I think, to a degree, yes, we're under pressure. Everybody's under pressure. That's what makes this industry so exciting. At the same time, we're pretty well positioned and pretty excited about what we're seeing on the landscape, but you have to be smart in how you proceed from here.
Is that a ditto for you?
Well, I think certainly echo what these guys said. I think they're on the right track. I think the other thing is, there's an enormous amount of creativity right now. There's a lot more venture investment. There's a lot more private equity investment. I mean, we're a recent example of that in this space. So I think everyone sees that our system of education, it's not just in the United States, frankly, it's globally, it doesn't work. I mean, we've been going with this industrial production model of education, where it's very much a seat time based model and an age based educational advancement model rather than a competency or skill based model. And if you look around this room and you look around in the workforce, we don't all get to where we're going simply based that we spent 42 minutes learning science, 42 minutes learning physics, 42 minutes learning English, so on and so forth, rinse and repeat, for 13 years, right? And you come out and you're ready to go in the workforce. It doesn't work that way, yes. Right? We all learn in different ways at different rates, and we all acknowledge that when we're all in the working world. But the system of education that we've got today doesn't provide that flexibility and configurability. Now, that said, the seat time-based model where you've got 20, 25 students in a class with an expert in front of a chalkboard doesn't support that. But the technology-based learning models that all of us have been working towards, and many of you are working towards as well, support that almost ultimate configurability or modularization or personalization of the learning experience. I think the question for all of us is, how do we do that at scale in an integrated fashion that still supports the role of the teacher and the educator and the educational system, so that we're not just saying, okay, plug into you're 6 years old, plug into your computer for 13 years, come out the other end and you're ready to go, because that model doesn't work either. So I think what we've got to figure out is, so what's the right hybrid system of education? And we're going through very, very rapid learning cycles and iterations to figure out what those models are. And as David said, they're not just happening in the United States. I mean, we're kind of working on things in South Korea and China and India. In some cases, we're going through generation skipping there. We're going straight to doing things on tablets and mobile phones that might not appear here in the US or Western Europe for another 3 or 4 years. But that ends up being the delivery vehicle of choice in some of those other markets. So I think the real opportunity for all of us collectively is to accelerate these innovation cycles so we can get to a better model of educational development and delivery for everyone as quickly as we can. Because in the US, we spend over $1 trillion a year on education, and we get very poor outcomes. I think we can all do a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions? Therese.
Can you speak to the issue, the educator issue of people who have a lot of products from a lot of different companies, and to the people in this room who are basically needing to get their products into these classrooms? What you mean by an integrated user experience that would in fact not be exclusive just to companies that you own?
Well, I mentioned that I came by way of the acquisition of SchoolNet. I think SchoolNet was always, part of its secret sauce was always that it was a content-neutral vendor-neutral platform that really united content, curriculum, instruction, assessment from across a customer's site in one platform where it was really interoperated. And when we became part of Pearson, I think we really agreed with our peers and colleagues at Pearson that was an important strategy for Pearson as well. And so Pearson, from a technological standpoint, from a platform technology standpoint, really across the whole K-12 business, we're committed to being able to be interoperable across multiple vendors, across multiple systems, across multiple content repositories. And we continue to do that today. So in many of our customer sites, they're using assessments from ETS, from Kaplan, as well as Pearson content, and we will make sure that we provide the best experience based on the user need. I think in terms of, the interoperability challenge is it's not a binary kind of challenge, right? It's a constant war against the bifurcation of logins and systems and user experiences and so on. I think where we're starting and where we have the most control, obviously, is where we have key Pearson systems that really need to be able to talk to each other. So when you have a Pearson student information system in your state or your district, it is not acceptable that you go to turn on, Reading Street, which is your basal, ELA program, and you can't actually log into it, even though you're logged into PowerSchool. It doesn't make sense, right? So we got to take care of the low-hanging fruit first, but we are really committed to opening up our APIs, opening up our data so that other systems can start to participate. In fact, we launched a year ago our PowerSchool ISV marketplace, where we've now provided an open API for marketplace partners. We have over 50 third-party partners that are now providing products and services on top of PowerSchool, leveraging our data, leveraging the PowerSchool APIs and capabilities, and we will continue to extend that across all of our products.
Yeah, if I can just add, I think we're still in an early stage here where, a lot of the focus has been on data integration. I think and then it'll shift to more content integration, and we're starting to see that in companies that are kind of mashing up content from different providers, content and data. I think the big open question is one about the user experience, and where does the majority of that learning experience happen? I think those of us on stage here would probably posit that hopefully that would occur through products and services that we end up building. But that said, that's not a birthright by any stretch of the imagination. That could end up occurring anywhere. But I think that is going to be one of the central tension points as this industry evolves further forwards with technology, because people won't be logging into 17 different applications or 12 different applications, or even logging in once and getting access to 14 different things, because it's a very disconnected user experience. And we all believe, and we've all said it, that having a coherent user experience is very important, because you want to minimize or eliminate those distractions to learning. Well, the only way you can do that is if you present everything in a consistent and coherent and integrated fashion. I think the open question is, where does that happen?
Question.
Given the dismal public funding outlook and the online technology development, a number of companies like HMH have been talking a lot about the consumer potential. I just want to get a brief response from each of the three of you, how likely you think it is the consumer purchase is going to end up being a significant way of picking up the slack from what's fallen off on the institutional side in K-12.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think who thinks the $6 billion basal market is a big market? I don't. I'm not used to seeing addressable markets that small. And quite honestly, in economic times like these, this is where you need to innovate, both in terms of your business model, in terms of your product and go-to-market. So we are definitely looking at the consumer market, and we're starting to deliver on it today. And you'll hear more from us, both in terms of alliances as well as some of our core launches to come over the next 12 to 18 months. So we do think that there's a significant market out there. Consumers, students are certainly, and parents, and you're even seeing that in a lot of the startups coming out, whether they're P2P networks or learning games, even being able to experience adaptive learning directly. parents are absolutely interested in making sure that their kids have the interventional content they need to address some of their developmental areas, and that's something that we're going to certainly take advantage of. We're already doing that really primarily in Asian markets, which are a little bit more advanced than where we are in the U.S., but you're starting to see that happen in the U.S. as well. So you'll see much more personalization around interventional content. You'll see it in learning games. You'll see it in adaptive learning. You'll see it in ELL programs and ESL. Those are serious opportunities for us to not drive new revenue streams, but also influence the institutional market at the same time.
So takeaway there is you guys are looking at consumer market as a marker. I mean, tablet sales by the end of this year will be about 124 million, 130 million, which is roughly equivalent to 2 tablets for every K-12 student. So are you looking at that as a marker then?
We not only are looking at it, we're starting to execute on it today.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, another short answer to that is, the consumerization of education has already happened, but not here. In India and China, you're looking at 20-25% of household income gets devoted to education. We're not there in the United States and Western Europe, but it inevitably will happen.
Absolutely. We have another question, I think, here on the side. Okay. Right there.
I had a question that's related to the last discussion, and that is access, equity of access. I mean, we've talked a lot about the problems of content delivery, logons, but if we actually talk about a tablet or a computer in the user's hands, what do you think the game changer will be so there is, in fact, computer access by every student in K-12?
Well, I think that I think it's a great point, and I actually think it's one of the reasons that we've actually been still more focused on the institutional market than the consumer market, because I think to the extent that we're trying to, do well but do good as well, I think that our best fulcrum for really changing things at a global level, back to Vineet's point about sort of focusing on educational outcomes, is still at the institutional level. And one of the things we're seeing is that this notion of equity of access is top of mind for our customers now, where it wasn't necessarily 2, 3, 4 years ago. And we launched, what started as a fairly fledgling pilot one-to-one program where we were really going in and consulting with districts and states around one-to-one initiatives and putting together custom sort of packages of offerings to support one-to-one initiatives. That business is exploding now, and there's tremendous interest from our customers in looking at us not just as a provider of content or even of software tools, but really as a turnkey provider of a completely open access, flat level playing field for access to technology and digital content for their students. And so I think that's going to be a big growth area, is finding ways to help our customers affordably provide that equity of access to their users.
We've been working with that market for a while now, and really it comes down to this. I mean, what are we good at? And so what we're good at is content. We're good at assessment. We're good at professional development. When we look at even our potential partners, or even our R&D, or even acquisitions, it's all about enablement and access. We take an agnostic approach to certainly to enablement, whether it's platforms, our own or partner platforms. And then with access, we are seeing it get a lot easier. I mean, we look at a sheet every day that's looking at the demand within K-12 schools for tablets, and they've definitely migrated from pure iPads to Android-based devices, and you're starting to see Android-based devices become much more of a focus outside of the U.S. as well. I think the good news there is that price points are coming down. We're even seeing certain companies purchase OEMs in China and start to come out with tablets that are fairly highly functional, and they've got the 10.1 screens at about a $200 price point, which I think you'll start seeing in the market in a couple of years. So the good news there is that it's going to get better. How schools treat these tablets, what's being delivered through them, what's being delivered around them is a different story, and that's really still an educational process as much as it is for them and for us.
Questions? Okay, I'll leave you guys with one question of my own. If you look at this very crude, drawing that I actually sort of hand stenciled, but you talk about sort of the basal and supplemental market, where we are today with textbooks, and call it whatever number, 6-8 billion supplemental and basal back in. You see a 13% decline and continued decline through some period of time. You obviously see, I think John Richards said 2 billion or something already spent. I don't know the context, I didn't catch with John, on digital products, but all in, they're saying digital basal, supplemental, and e-learning, $24 billion market. What I'm interested in, what keeps you up at night? Just 1 to 3 things, however many you want to say. What keeps you up at night during that dotted line period of time during this transition?
I mean, I think the challenging thing, as we see it, is we've started making 100% of our content, products, and services available digitally over 3 years ago, which I think is great from a readiness standpoint, from a supply standpoint. The question is when will all the demand be there to consume all those things in digital forms and fashion? So it certainly gets back to the equity point. How long does it take to get to one-to-one? We're almost 3 decades into the digitization of US K-12. And I think over the next 5 years, we can finally get to the point where we will get close to one-to-one. In the higher education markets, we're not only past one-to-one, but we're moving past 2-to-1 and getting closer to 3-to-1. And those being, laptops, smartphones, and increasingly tablets as a third form factor. So I think we'll get there more quickly in the college market than we will in the K-12 market. The challenge in the K-12 market is we've got to work with a lot of teachers and educators to bring them along and help them understand how education can be better in this digital realm. And I think there's a lot of anxiety there, there's a lot of uncertainty there, but I think the potential and promise are so transformational. I think we really will drive a step change improvement in learning. The question is, how are these curves kind of offset as you've shown here? Do they get closer to intersecting at a higher point? Don't know. And I think that certainly creates some questions from a funding standpoint and a readiness standpoint. But I think what we're working very actively on is making sure we've got all the right products and services at each stage of evolution. So for the customers who want to go all digital today, we've got things there for you so you can move to an all digital classroom today. In fact, I think all of us could make that statement. For customers who are a little further back and want to use primarily print with digital as a supplement, or only do assessment online, or only track their data online, we can all do that as well. So I think it's how quickly does the demand move, not so much how quickly is supply there.
I think there are a lot of things that keep me up at night, but if I had to sort of mention the couple of big ones, I mean, clearly, increased competition is for that green curve there is a huge factor for us, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? We've been able to maintain a tremendous stranglehold on the physical supply chain, on cost containment, on production. The fact that every state had its own standards, created a high bar in terms of cost of localization of content. All of those things are going away. So many of just being honest here, right, the key advantages that we have as large traditional companies are evaporating.
But you're Pearson. You're Pearson. Come on.
So I think that's obviously a huge challenge for us. I think the other one that is probably less obvious is, it's not just to be able to capitalize on that shift, right, and to be a leader across the divide is going to take far more than taking our traditional textbook assets and converting them into digital form. That's a losing hypothesis. That's a losing proposition. We all know that, right? We're going to need to become as expert as we were in the previous generation of technology, the book, at delivering compelling learning experiences with the new generation of technologies. And that means we're going to have to be more like Electronic Arts than we are like Simon & Schuster.
That's interesting, yeah.
I think that's a great point, Luyen. I'm not, whenever I talk to a lot of our technology partners, I'm not interested in PDFs or digital textbooks unless they are really, even beyond EPUB 3. We really need to start to innovate, and it's all about the engagement, and that's the way we really need to think about it. What keeps me up at night, I learned very early on in technology, my technology career, I guess going back to the late 90s, to be paranoid. I had an old boss, Mary Meeker, who said, it's okay to be paranoid, and I learned that early on, and really where the paranoia comes from, again, it's not so much from direct competitors as much as it is what are the emerging trends, what's going to come out of left field and knock us out. And then, the second component of that, and related, is like making sure you're making the right choices. It's very hard in an environment where there are all these emerging models, all this dialogue, all this noise, to make sure that you're making the right choices. You're not going to be 100% correct ever. As a matter of fact, you might be 10 to 20% correct, but yet still even being 10 to 20% correct is not easy. The other thing is just obviously when you're an incumbent in the market, it's all about execution. That's the thing that keeps us up. Can our sales force sell what we're providing them? Are we flexible enough? Are we agile enough? Those are really the three things.
I think we got to wrap it up. Thanks very much. We really appreciate it. It was great insight. Terrific insight.